Hey there. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the word hacker. It's a term that gets thrown around a lot, and frankly, it's pretty misunderstood. So we're going to get past all the movie cliches and find out what it really means in the world of cybersecurity.
So let me ask you a quick question. When you hear the word hacker, what's the first image that pops into your head? For a lot of people, it's probably some shadowy figure in a hoodie, hunched over a glowing screen in a dark room, right? Kind of like the classic movie villain.
But what if that stereotype is just a tiny piece of a much bigger picture? What if I told you that a lot of the most talented hackers out there are actually the good guys, the ones hired by huge companies and even governments to be their first line of defense online? Okay, let's really get into it. Before we can talk about the different types of hackers, we've got to start with a proper definition, one that goes way beyond what you see in Hollywood. You see, at its core, a hacker is really just someone who has a deep, almost intimate understanding of how computer systems work. They use that knowledge to poke around, find weaknesses, and sometimes to make those systems even stronger. The label itself isn't good or bad. It's just a description of a skill set. And this is where it gets really interesting, because there's a huge distinction we have to make. The simple act of hacking, of just testing a system, isn't automatically a crime. What separates the hero from the villain in this story really comes down to two little words: permission and intent. That's the main idea we're going to unpack today. And that brings us perfectly to our first and maybe most important category, the protectors. So let's talk about the white hat hackers. These are the cybersecurity pros. They're ethical, they're professionals, and this is key, they always work with permission. Their whole job is to do something called penetration testing. That basically means a company pays them to try and hack into their systems. Why? So they can find all the security holes and patch them up before a real criminal finds them. You'll see them with job titles like ethical hacker or security analyst. So here's the bottom line. Companies literally pay white hat hackers to think like a bad guy. They use the enemy's own tactics against them to build up stronger defenses. It's a really fascinating and totally essential role in keeping our digital world safe. But you know how it goes. For every hero trying to protect us, there's usually a villain trying to cause some chaos. Which brings us to the other end of the spectrum. Let's talk about the hackers who actually fit that criminal stereotype we mentioned, the black hats. Yep, black hat hackers are the criminals of the hacking world. They operate completely without permission, and they're usually driven by things like money, getting famous in underground circles, or sometimes just old-fashioned revenge. Their actions are the stuff you read about in the headlines: stealing personal data, unleashing nasty malware, and holding entire companies hostage with ransomware. And I want to be crystal clear here. Hollywood might make it look cool and exciting, but in the real world, black hat hacking isn't a game. It's a serious crime with really severe consequences. We're talking major prison time and fines that can ruin your life. This really breaks it down perfectly. It all comes down to three things. First, permission. White hats have it, black hats absolutely do not. Second, motivation. One is here to protect and secure, while the other is all about personal gain. And finally, the outcome. One leads to better security for everyone, and the other just causes data breaches and financial loss. Now, as you know, the world isn't always just black and white. There are some shades of gray, and there are also, well, the amateurs. So let's look at the folks who fall somewhere in the middle. A gray hat hacker, they operate in a pretty murky area. They'll hack into a system without getting permission first, but their goal might not be malicious. Sometimes they just want to see if they can, and they might even report the security flaw to the company afterward. But here's the thing, the law is really clear on. It doesn't matter if your intentions were good. If you hack without authorization, you're breaking the law. Period. And then you have the script kiddies. This is a term for beginners, usually with very little technical skill, who download and use hacking tools and scripts they find online. The key here is that they don't really understand how these tools actually work. Their process is basically a copy and paste job. They find a tool, they follow a quick tutorial, and they launch an attack. And you might be surprised to hear this, but a huge number of those social media account hacks you hear about aren't done by expert masterminds. They're done by script kiddies using these kinds of simple, ready-made tools. Okay, so with all these different kinds of hackers running around, why on earth would a company go out and actively try to hire one? Well, the answer is actually really simple and totally logical. The demand for ethical white hat hackers is absolutely massive. I'm talking about banks, online shopping sites, government agencies, big tech companies, cloud providers, even small startups. Basically, if an organization has something valuable online, they need someone to protect it. It all boils down to a pretty simple business calculation. It is so much cheaper and so much better to pay an ethical hacker to find a problem now than to clean up the catastrophic mess of a major data breach later. Prevention is always, always better than disaster recovery. So if you're someone who's interested in this stuff, maybe you're a student thinking about a career, it's really important to know that there's a clear and correct path to follow. Your goal should always be to become a white hat. That means you have to learn things the right way, legally and ethically. It means focusing on building real, deep skills, not just looking for shortcuts. It's about choosing a responsible career path over a dangerous and very short-lived, illegal thrill. Just remember this. Real hackers, the true professionals, build rewarding careers. They don't build criminal records. So, let's do a quick recap. What did we learn today? Well, the biggest thing is that hacker doesn't automatically mean criminal. The real difference is all about permission and intent. And our digital world desperately needs ethical hackers to keep it safe. Just knowing this stuff is your first step to staying safe online. So, what's next? Well, in our next explainer, we're going to dive into the most common cyber attacks that everyone should know about. See you then.